time to join us today. We certainly appreciate it after a full day of teaching that you guys took the time to jump on this Zoom and hear a little bit more about literacy in South Dakota. The Office of Standards Learning and Leadership, along with the Department of Ed, is very excited to share the components of our new literacy initiative with you. It's designed to support districts and teachers in providing excellent instruction in the area of literacy. I've said this in my other webinars, but I'm kind of calling this my adopted labor of love because I wasn't around with the department when this idea was conceived, but now I'm kind of charged with tending it and making sure that it grows and thrives. And I think the bottom line here is that we're all in this together. We all want kids to be able to learn and read. We know how much their world opens up when they do have that ability. So I'm just excited to share it with you. I'm Patty Lager. I'm the ELA specialist with the Office of Standards Learning and Leadership. Before this position, I worked for a couple years as an instructional coach. And before that, I taught English language arts at Bridgewater Emory School for about 27 years. Alongside me today is our office administrator, Vera Van Winkle. She's going to man the chat, maybe answer some questions, probably put some links in the chat for us. But if anytime you have a question or a comment, please feel free to add it to the chat or just go ahead and interrupt me and ask the question. That's perfectly fine. Okay, so what's on our agenda? We plan to share some high-level info about our new literacy framework, which includes some information on the science of reading. I won't go into too much detail. I'll show you a few videos related to that. We'll talk about the implementation guides that go along with our framework. And we'll talk about some exciting upcoming professional learning opportunities designed to support districts and teachers in implementing this framework. Okay, I'm not going to read every slide, but I will sum them up for you. The intent of the framework is to help districts provide a quality research-based curriculum, along with help to provide some professional learning opportunities for all educators. And I think the key words here is just to remember that it's research and evidence-based, and it will also go along with supporting the state content standards in reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Gotta admit a couple more people here. So the research used in this framework spans about a body of work of over 50 years. So it is something that has been around for a while and been researched for a while. I think we can all agree that all students benefit from evidence-based literacy and high quality instruction. I think we can probably also agree that all children birth through 12th grade benefit from effective instructors. And we want to ensure that our students possess the language and literacy skills needed to be college, career, and life ready. We want to give them a fighting chance for their future, in other words. So why is literacy so important? To me, everything in life becomes easier when one can read, and one's chances for success also vastly improve when lifelong learning begins. But I'd like to hear from you. So before we get too much into the science of reading, would you please just type one thing you know about the science of reading in the chat? I'm sure that you teachers have a lot of things that you know about the science of reading. So if you would just put some things in the chat, I'd appreciate it.
We've got that it's great for students with dyslexia, Scarborough's reading rope.
Yes, I'm going to show you a video on that in a little bit here.
Structured literacy, the 5 pillars of reading, teaching the big 5. The comment that when I began teaching it, my thoughts were, why was I never taught this way?
Exactly. Anything else? you guys seem to have a good handle on what science of reading is. Like I said, I'll briefly go into some of these things. I'm going to show you a few videos, just because then you won't have to listen to me talk the whole time, and they can explain it better than I can. So we will keep going. So the science of reading, like I said, is a large body of scientifically based research. It spans about 50 years. It's not an ideology, philosophy, fad, nor is it a single program of instruction or a single component like phonics, but it includes research in a lot of different areas such as neuroscience, psychology, educational pedagogy, and linguistics. I think it's also important for us to remember is that for some children, learning to read seems really easy, but it's a process that needs to be taught systematically with explicit instruction. Okay, so we'll get into the big five here that we were talking about. I got a couple more to admit here. The big five that a couple of you mentioned in the chat, but the first one is phonemic awareness. This step is just the basic foundation. It's the learning of sounds. So it's the conscious knowledge that spoken words are made up of smaller parts called phonemes. For example, the word sit is composed of 3 phonemes or sounds. So practicing this phonemic awareness gives students the basic foundation that helps them learn to read and spell. Next, we have phonics. I like to look at phonics as involving kids becoming cryptographers. They're kind of learning a piece of the code, so to speak, at a time. The phonics curriculum needs to follow the correct systematic pattern of putting the sounds together, putting the sounds they learned in phonemic awareness stage together. It's very important when you are using a phonics curriculum that it follows the scope and sequence that I have listed here. So as you're walking through the process of choosing curriculum or looking through your curriculum that you have, just take a moment to make sure that the scope and sequence is followed. And if it's not followed in this order in the phonics program you have, it's probably still fine, but you might have to just rearrange the sequence that it's in, if that makes sense. Next, we have fluency. Well, all of these go together, obviously, but I feel like comprehension, which is the last component, it's very difficult if one can't read fluently. If one is not reading with accuracy, rate, and prosody, if they're reading very slowly, inaccurately, or choppily with no expression, obviously comprehension is going to suffer. They're not going to be understanding what they're reading. So sometimes, as you know, this may involve a student reading a passage several times to get it right. And that's okay, and it's completely normal. Next, we have vocabulary. If a child can learn the basic meaning of prefixes, suffixes, and roots, he or she is obviously going to be more successful in other subjects such as math, social studies, and science, because they'll be able to start to figure out what some of those words mean, even though they're not sure from the start, just by looking at the parts of the word, the prefixes, suffixes, and roots. And again, a systematic approach to learning vocabulary is very important as well. Next or last, we have reading comprehension. It's kind of putting the first 4 together. Since we read so many different types of material, we need to make sure we're modeling different types of material as well. We need to model different strategies so that students can attack any type of text. I've always been a really good fictional reader, but maybe not very good at reading a computer manual or things like that. So we need to give our students those skills or help them develop those skills so that they can read whatever it is that is thrown at them. Okay, we'll get into a little bit more of the different parts of science of reading. The systematic instruction, as you know, and some of you mentioned, is very important. It's something that's carefully thought out, built upon prior learning. It builds strategically from simple to complex, and it goes across those 5 components that we just talked about. Next, we have the 4-part processing model. And as you can see from the information so far, the science of reading involves many related processes. I'm going to show you this video that kind of will show us how the brain learns to read. Maybe some of you have seen this or something like it, but it touches on the 4-part processing model and how these things need to work together.
Sorry, I'm not a magician. I'm a scientist.
What do we know about the complex process of learning to read? Surprisingly, a lot. Scientific research collected over the past 4 decades reveals what happens in the brain and what must happen in the classroom to enable skillful reading. Most children learn to walk and talk naturally without a lot of support from adults, but reading is different. Reading is not hardwired in the brain, and the neural pathways involved must be developed through successful instructional experiences. Let's look at the reading brain. The parts of the brain that allow us to process sounds and recognize visual images are already in place at birth in the left hemisphere. However, the phonological assembly region is not intact at birth. This is the part of the brain that allows us to connect speech sounds with visual images, such as letters, and enables reading. And it must be built through explicit, systematic phonics instruction and practice with decoding.
Okay, so as I said, you can see where the brain has to use many different processes in order for a student to learn to read. Next, we're going to look at the simple view of reading video. Now, I'm no math teacher, but I know that 1 times 0 is always 0. So this video will talk about how if decoding or language comprehension is lacking, reading comprehension can't happen.
When we think about the essential skills children need to build their reading brain, Goff and Tunmer's model, known as the simple view of reading, is quite helpful. In this model, the critical sub-skills of reading are simplified to their essential categories, decoding and language comprehension, and framed as a multiplication equation, with reading comprehension as the product or goal on the right side of the equation. The idea is this: strong reading comprehension results only when both decoding and language comprehension are strong. To illustrate this idea, let's assign values of 0 for weak and 1 for strong. If decoding is weak and assigned a value of 0, and language comprehension is strong, a value of 1, reading comprehension is weak because 0 multiplied by 1 is 0. Conversely, if language comprehension is weak but decoding is strong, reading comprehension still suffers. 1 times 0 is 0. Only when both domains on the left side of the equation are strong does reading comprehension become a strong 1, because 1 times 1 is 1. This simple view of reading tells us that children need to learn essential skills to decode to get text off the page, while also developing their understanding of the world and of literacy. Although reading is a complex process, this simple view is helpful because all of the essential sub-skills of reading, such as phonological awareness and vocabulary, can be assigned to the decoding and language comprehension domains on the left side of the equation.
Okay, so as you can see how important the systematic instruction is also in order for all of these to lead into reading comprehension. Next, and I think someone mentioned the reading rope. I'm going to show a video on this, but I think if you, as you're watching it, think about if one of these strands is unraveling or not secure or kind of frayed. Again, skilled reading and reading comprehension and reading fluency are going to struggle, and the student is going to struggle as well.
My life is essentially being on tour. How do I have tools that can leverage myself where there can be more of me? Yet
Another helpful theoretical model for the reading process is Scarborough's reading rope, which expands upon the simple view of reading. Scarborough's reading rope provides a meaningful visual representation of the process by which decoding, or word recognition, and language comprehension subskills are combined during skillful reading. The decoding subskills are each assigned a strand in the rope: phonological awareness, decoding and spelling, and sight recognition. Under language comprehension, we need to build these reading subskills: background knowledge, vocabulary knowledge, language structures, verbal reasoning, and literacy knowledge. Think of these subskills as strands in the reading rope that become stronger and stronger the more tightly the strands are woven together. As the language comprehension subskills grow and get stronger, the reader becomes increasingly strategic in their reading. At the same time, as the reader strengthens their decoding subskills, they're becoming more automatic in their reading. With increasingly strategic and increasingly automatic reading, skilled reading occurs and the reader can comprehend text. Skilled reading appears to be effortless, but a skilled reader has fortified the subskills of the reading rope in order to manage the skills simultaneously and automatically, resulting in reading comprehension.
Okay, and the next topic we're going to talk a little bit more about is closely related to reading is the writing rope model. The writing model further emphasizes the importance of reading when it comes to writing. If one struggles with reading, writing is going to be difficult as well. I have often found that in my own classroom. When a student couldn't read very well, writing was a real chore for them oftentimes. And if you think about it, all educational subjects strongly rely on your reading skills for the students to be successful. Reading is everywhere, from reading a recipe to reading a building plan to reading a story problem. And therefore, if you ask a student to write any of those, that's going to be difficult as well if they can't read the recipe to begin with. Our next topic is explicit instruction. I'm going to show you a short video of Anita Archer, which many of you have probably heard. She's kind of our guru in explicit instruction, but she'll show you the I do it, we do it, I do it, we do it, you do it methodology that she believes in. She also will touch on the fact that students who are tier 2 and tier 3, this routine is very important for them to feel comfortable while they're learning. And she'll talk a little bit about older students as well.
Teachers, let's face it, it's not always easy to keep our students focused. You want to know my secret weapon? Education.com.
So one of the ways that teachers are empowered and the achievement can be better gained from students is if I have a certain thing I'm going to teach, I'm going to teach you sounds over time, that I have a certain routine that I use for introducing those sounds. So it might be very simple where I say the sound, then we say the sound, then you say the sound, then we practice it with other letters. But the next time I have a sound to introduce, I'm doing it the same way. I say the sound, we say the sound, then you say the sound, then we practice with other letters. Now, the benefit is, and that's an example from like primary grades, but even if I'm teaching middle school, maybe I'm a middle school social studies teacher, and I have to teach vocabulary every week, and I have a routine, and I write the word down, I introduce the word, and the students put it in their log, and then I introduce a student-friendly explanation, they put it in their log, and then I give them lots of examples of it, and then I check their understanding by asking them questions. And every time I introduce words, I'm using the same steps. And the benefit is, number one, to the teacher, they get that down. It's empowering to them because they can use it with some automaticity and some seamless flow. So they are definitely empowered, but the students are also empowered because they don't have to keep thinking, what's the teacher doing here? Go back to that secondary example, the kids know after the word's gonna be introduced, we're gonna write it in our log. After the definition has been introduced, we're gonna put it in our own words. Then the teacher's gonna give us examples, ask us questions so that students are so familiar with the way it's proceeding. They can put all of their thoughtfulness on the content rather than on the task. So that's where we want their thoughts to be. So basically, teachers and students benefit. Now, the kids, some students probably could thrive even without it. But students that are at risk, tier 2, tier 3, students really benefit from instructional routines because then they are more confident, they know what they're doing. And so they're more likely to be able to participate fully.
So as she kind of demonstrates in her video, reading success along with known routines will also in most cases improve some student behavior as well. If students are comfortable with the routine that the teacher is giving. Okay, before we go on, does anyone have any questions about any of those subjects that I just covered? If not, we'll get right into the literacy framework and its components. Okay, so we'll talk about the literacy framework. This is posted on the website. In addition, each school, each superintendent should have received one or will be receiving one very shortly because they were mailed out last week. They will have received a hard copy of the framework along with some other flyers and such that I'll talk about later. So the framework itself has 6 components: leadership for implementation, assessment and database decision-making, professional learning, classroom instruction, tiered instruction, and then some literacy supports offered by the Department of Education. So our first topic or component, I guess you could say, is leadership for implementation. So this is where your literacy leadership in your school is developed. And if you notice, each component has a flow chart. So if you're working on your school's leadership team and your school can answer yes to all these questions, you would move on to the next step. However, if your answer is no, we provide some supports here. We provide an implementation guide, and we'll provide some courses that will help schools to walk through this process with them. But each step in this, well, excuse me. So if I got messed up. I'll go to the next page. So the team needs to work together. The team includes various stakeholders, such as administrators, teachers, literacy and instructional coaches, parents, community members, and other personnel. Some of you maybe already have your teams developed, and that's great. So this step you could probably just use to maybe hone your, what your team is doing and make other plans. But what this team will do, you figure out what methods they want to use what kind of data they want to use to drive instruction and provide opportunities for teachers to participate in professional learning on the research methods. Then we have the assessment and database decision-making. The leadership team here will decide on appropriate screening and benchmarking tools to use and progress monitoring to make database decisions. Again, you notice that we have the flow chart here. And all of this will be used by the leadership team to make research-based decisions for your school and for your students. So database decision-making includes opportunities for educators to do a couple of things: to increase their understanding of how to administer assessments with fidelity, to analyze and interpret those data results, apply insights to improving instructional practices, resulting in increased student outcomes. It's important to remember that you will establish this multi-tiered system to help all students become better readers based on the data that you are gathering. So the next step is professional learning. This piece is one of the most important steps or pieces to implement a successful framework. When teachers are trained in what they're teaching and implementing, buy-in is higher and instruction is better. I think we could all agree with that. And professional learning just provides so many other things for us. It provides collaboration, it probably provides some coaching and feedback, gives us a chance to reflect, and makes what we're doing a little bit more sustainable as far as going forward. So the team should develop a plan for professional development, which not only trains teachers on quality practices, but also helps them to form cohorts of like teachers to communicate with. I always appreciated that as a lone English teacher in a smaller school. I could form some relationships with other teachers, and then we could bounce ideas off each other and just kind of support each other. So these are important. These opportunities are important to help teachers, as you guys know, to improve your craft. And in addition, they should be offered and encouraged by the entire staff, for paraprofessionals and all teachers. We're all in this literacy, I guess we're all literacy teachers. Even if you're not the English teacher or a reading teacher, everyone in the district should be on the same team. That's what I'm trying to say, I guess. Next, after the professional learning, we have classroom instruction. We know that schools where the administration is more involved in the classroom, they're usually more successful. And as far as literacy goes, if all the members of the staff are speaking the same language, that's going to help too. Everybody's on the same team, like I said. So your literacy program should include explicit goals and implement high quality curricula. And it should impact instruction for all students and achievement by most of the students. So literacy instruction, as you know, shouldn't end in 5th grade. Older students need to continue to build literacy skills. So teachers of all ages and subject matter need to be involved and use these practices in their classroom. And we offer training for every, like I said, every staff member. There's something out there for them that I'll talk about in a little bit. But I guess the important thing is to use that evidence, use your evidence-based resources and supports, and follow the data in the classroom. Next, we'll talk a little bit about tiered instruction. This is where your interventions probably are going to come into play a little bit more. And I'll talk about the different tiers in a minute, but effective classroom instruction should meet the needs of most students. And then a system for high quality intensive interventions is required to meet the needs of all students. Your interventions should be provided for all students, and they should be outside of the classroom instruction, skill-based, systematic, and explicit, done by trained professionals. Thus, if you have paras that are doing this, we can provide some training for them. Research-based, small group, and progress monitored. The framework, often referred to as RTI, has 3 tiers, as probably most of you know, but tier 1 is universal instruction for everyone. And then tier 2 are your targeted group interventions, smaller groups. And then lastly, we have intensive individualized interventions for those kiddos that maybe struggle a little bit more with reading. It's also important in this step to make sure you're looking at your data and doing proper progress monitoring, because students will be moving between tier 1 and tier 2. They're not always just going to be in tier 2 once they are assigned a tier 2 group. Sometimes they will move back and forth between tiers, depending on the skills that are being taught. And then lastly, this section includes links to various offices within the department that support literacy. So on the framework, there are links, many different links that will link up to whatever you might need. Next, we're going to talk about implementation guides. So along with the framework, implementation guides have been developed to support stakeholders and guide them through the tasks that you need to do in order to implement this with fidelity. So there's a district guide and a family guide. The DOE plans to offer an online course for each of these guides to stakeholders And then to guide the stakeholders through each step of the implementation process. And we're hoping to offer those maybe beginning mid-October. They're in the works right now. So the implementation guide for the district level looks like this. You'd have a task that needs to be done. Those are in bold. And then who needs to do it, the timeline of things, of when things should be done, and then different links and resources here. Some of these links are fillable templates so that you can develop your school-wide plan, you can develop your team, you can write your goals, and so on and so forth. So each step or component of the LIT plan has a different step in the guide as well. Okay, so we've talked about all of this, but now how do we learn about it a little bit more? So we'll talk a little bit about the training that we have offered. Using some of our COVID relief funds, we're offering a menu of professional development options called AIM Pathways for South Dakota. This is specifically for educators to become trained in the science of reading. There's several different opportunities that I'll talk about. The length and the rigor vary. A new registration window just opened August 25th, and it's open until September 15th. These courses are offered free of charge by the department, but participants are responsible for graduate credits, which will be at the reduced rate through DSU, and that link will be coming soon if any of you are already involved. DSU is working on their system and they're upgrading it, so they're waiting to send out the link until their upgrade is completely finished and ready to go. Okay, so what kind of classes do we offer? The first one is Pathways to Proficient Reading. This is a course mainly for all K-5 reading teachers. And as I'm talking about these, the way the AIM Pathways kind of labels out teachers is they label core teachers as specific reading teachers, and everyone else are non-core teachers. So even like your high school English teacher would be considered a non-core teacher as far as the AIM Pathways goes. But this would be mostly for all your K-5 teachers. It's about 50 to 55 total hours, but you'll have the entire school year to work on it. It also offers 6 one-hour Zoom sessions or virtual coaching sessions. You'd get 3 graduate credits, and all of these courses are approved or accredited by the International Dyslexia Association. Next is a course for your leadership in your building. Administrators, this would be very beneficial for your administrators to take. Because when we're all speaking the same language, everyone benefits. So if you'd like to encourage your administrators to get involved, that would be awesome. But their course would kind of focus on more leading the change and leading those teams that I talked about in the framework. This one's about 30 hours, excuse me, 90-minute synchronous virtual coaching sessions and 2 credits. And then next, the Pathways to Proficient Writing course is also available. This is probably more for teachers who have been through the foundational reading training, through maybe the letters training. This would be better for them than to maybe take the Pathways to Proficient Reading because they've already been through a lot of that. But this would help them to infuse a little more writing into their classroom based on the science of reading. And again, this one's about 30 hours and 2 graduate credits. So what if you're not a core classroom teacher in grades K-5 or an administrator? What courses can you take? We have a couple of those for you as well. So we have the Early Childhood Bundle, which is available for core, these are not available for core classroom teachers, but they're available for pre-K teachers, para-educators working in grades K-3, and any non-core classroom teacher in grades K-3, such as music, physical education, and art. Again, it's asynchronous. You kind of do it at your own pace. There are, I believe, 3 Zoom sessions or coaching sessions that go with the 2 bundles. Next, we have Steps to Literacy 2 bundle. This one is very similar to the Early Education Bundle, but it would be more for paraeducators working in grades 4 through 12, and then any of those non-core classroom teachers in grades 4-12. So again, music, physical education, art, English, science, social studies, anyone who's not a direct reading teacher, this would be good for. Okay, so if you're still not sure what class is right for you, I think Vera probably will put this literacy website page on the in the chat. But if you go to this page, this flowchart is interactive and you can click on any of these links and it will give you more information about each course. Also in your literacy package, there were flyers sent with this flowchart and with each of the courses. So if you haven't seen that around, maybe ask your superintendent if he or she has it. And this is something that could be put in the workroom or shared out as well that way. Okay, so what are our next steps? Peruse the literacy initiative and the implementation guides that are sent in the mail or online. Like I said, I'm pretty sure Vera put the link in there. Register for the appropriate AIM Pathways course for you. Share this information about the AIM Institute courses with other staff members. I want to really emphasize we have a lot of capacity right now to get a lot of people trained. So if you could encourage other staff members to get involved, that would be great. And then watch for courses on the implementation guides as well to be offered really soon. And lastly, if you have any questions now, I'm going to open it up for questions. Please put them in the chat, or don't be afraid to email me or call me. I'm very open to answering questions, as is Vera. But if at any time you have questions, please don't hesitate to get a hold of one of us. Okay. Questions, Vera?
We don't have anything in the chat yet, but one of the common questions we get is, well, I took the letters training. Do I need to take this training? And you do not need to take the Pathways to Proficient Reading if you've taken the letters training, but we would encourage you to take Pathways to Proficient Writing.
Exactly.
We would also encourage you to share this information with your administrator. We've had a couple webinars with administrators, and we've heard from some that have taken the literacy leadership course. So I'd really encourage you to share that information with them as well. And looks like Jean has a question. You can go ahead and unmute if you'd like to, Jean.
Yes, so if people can still join the AIM classes now, but then would they have to catch up on all the work then?
So with the new registration window, there are different dates for each. There'll be different cohorts. So
Oh,
yep.
okay, that sounds great.
Yep.
And then I'm wondering if, all of us are sitting in schools and we're being trained in everything. We had 5 years of a coach here, and then I went and got my dyslexia certificate, and now I'm doing the AIM course, the Science of Reading course, which is excellent. But what I'm wondering is 2 things. One, is there any movement on getting teachers trained before they come to a school, so that in their first year they can know these things and implement it their first year in whatever school they're in? Because we have a lot of turnaround. There's only 4 people here who were here 2 years ago in elementary. And then second of all, following up on this S. Pearson's question, any kind of accountability on this, or this is just an opt-in kind of a thing, the literacy initiative? So
to answer your first question, we are offering a cohort to higher ed educators that are involved in teaching reading to those pre-service teachers. So we have a cohort, I can't remember for sure the number, but about, I think around 18 higher ed people around the state that are taking it. That was offered to all accredited educational schools in South Dakota. The accountability piece, Vera, I'm going to let you speak to that a little bit, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, those are both great questions, Jean, and we've really been working with a higher, with the institutes of higher education to try to get this to them so that they're preparing teachers as well. It's just something that takes a little bit of time because that's not something that has really been done in the past. As far as the second question about accountability, this is completely optional and voluntary. I had a question earlier about the availability of funding. We are using our state level ARP ESSER funds to train teachers in Science of Reading through AIM Pathways. And so we only have those funds for a limited time. And so as far as offering it beyond this round that we're doing, that's really depends on availability of funding and if we can find some other funding sources. And someone is asking if it would be offered in the summer. Right now, there are not plans to offer this in the summer. We will more than likely offer our foundational reading trainings that we've offered in the past. Again, it just depends on funding. We are looking for some additional funding so that we can continue this. It is very important. But right now, we just want to take advantage of the funds that we do have right now and get as many teachers, paraprofessionals, and administrators trained in this. Great question.
Any other questions? Okay, well, if there are no more questions, we will end the Zoom call, but please, like I said, if you have questions, if you think about things afterwards that you wanted to ask and didn't, please don't hesitate to shoot me an email, give me a call, especially about the AIM Pathways courses or whatever it is, it might be. I'm very willing to help out with whatever you need. So again, thank you so much for joining us at the end of a teaching day. We really appreciate it because we know sometimes that time is precious to you people. So thank you so much. And we look forward to moving literacy forward.